Welcome. My name is Linda Diamond Shapiro. I have a couple of too many degrees from University of Chicago. You can tell I love the place. And don't think about this. I live in Hyde Park. And my husband went to the UC and the business school. And, are you ready? I have 2 children who graduated from lab school. And I told them they could not go to U of C. But they're both in college, and I talk to them a lot about, what they want to do next, and I get blank looks, and, sometimes I say internship at them, and they glare at me back. So I understand kind of a bit about where you might be in your path just from, breakfast conversations. What I'm asking our panelists to do today, I know you have a little bit of a brief bio on each of us, but what I'm asking each of us to do is just stand up and for a minute or two talk about their experience, first where they were as an undergrad, and then where they were at U of C, because some of us went to the college, some of us went to other parts of the university, and then connect those college and University of Chicago experiences to where they are now. Was it a straight path? Was it a curvy path? Was it, did you know exactly what you wanted to do next, beginning when you were 18, or did it take 20 more years? So those are the kinds of questions that I'd like us to just start with. And then my hope for the rest of the panel is really to moderate questions and answers. So I wish we could give you an economic forecast and a list of internships that were open, but short of that, we'll try to address your questions. So with that, I would like to start with you, Sue, if that's okay.
Okay, I don't think that, hello? Working? Okay, I'm Sue, and I was a third year at the university when I dropped out to start my company, which is called All Tuition. And the university, I guess if I'm drawing a line, they were nice enough to let me in, and so I went there for 3 years. I was a math major. Third year, I took this class at the Booth School called New Venture Challenge, and came out of that class. They were nice enough to give me office space, which kind of became my home when I quit my job, moved out of my house. Like, my parents kicked me out of the house. And so they were nice enough to kind of support me, give me a little bit of seed funding early on, and kind of shuffle me through the year that it took to really raise funding and get the company off the ground. So if anybody is interested in working for a tech startup or starting their own, I'm really happy to talk about that.
Sue, I have to ask you a follow-up question. I don't know if this is on or not. What gave you the guts to think you could raise that kind of venture capital?
I didn't know. I mean, so we ended up raising almost $2 million, and going into it,
sorry, how much?
Almost so like 1.7 million. And so that happened that happened over the course of 6 months, and it's been about 6 months since we finished raising money. And when I started out, I had no idea that we were ever going to raise venture capital. Like, I thought that it was going to be a nonprofit. I knocked on foundation doors, asked if they could give me $100,000 so that me and some other dude could program a website for a year and just quit school and let that be our job. And that didn't really work out. And we, myself and my 2 other co-founders, we were prepared to kind of bootstrap, and we did for a long time. We bootstrapped. We took side jobs. We did contract work actually for the university. We programmed some of the university websites, made money that way, and then kind of had 2 jobs where we did our real work by day, and then worked on the company by night and on weekends. And we were prepared to do that forever. But then we're lucky enough to get some loans from people, get some initial investors. We raised $85,000 initially. And that got us to a place where we could actually stop doing contract work, focus on the company, and build enough of a product to go raise real venture capital. But, I mean, we had no idea whether or not it was going to work out.
What a nice story. Okay. Thank you. And Wayne, is that you there? Yeah.
Hey, Wayne Dwan, graduated 2005. I still remember taking the next step in 2003. That was probably the 2 years here. And where I've been since graduating, I graduated, did my internship. I'm sure many of you guys are in this position. I did my internship at Banana Republic. And straight out of college, I worked at Banana Republic doing merchandising for women's sweaters. thought that's what I wanted to do, and then realized I'm kind of scared, and I did the professional delay tactic of going into consulting. So I was in consulting for 3 years, had a great time, then went to Target and ran the frozen meat and frozen seafood business, which was a lot of fun. If you have any questions about seafood, happy to answer them. And then got my MBA from Kellogg, and now I'm at Walgreens.com running the vitamins, diet, and fitness, and grocery businesses.
Thank you very much. And Nick.
Hi, I'm gonna move a little forward here so people can see me on the right side of the room. So, yeah, my name is Nick Bafana, and graduated from the college in 2000. My passion out of the college was global business. And for me, global business, the best way for me to get into it was working in management consulting out of college, where I did do a lot of international travel. I worked with BCG, and with BCG I started then focusing more of my time in global supply chain work. And then I attended Kellogg and their Masters in Engineering Management program, so I did a double degree there. Came back to BCG, and then got picked up by people that I worked with at BCG to run purchasing at W.W. Grainger. And what is exciting for me in my current role is I lead a large team. So it's about a 30-person organization. We are responsible for managing over 3,000 suppliers, and similar theme on these three is about $3 billion in purchases annually. So there's a lot of things that you can do with your background from Chicago. So I would take the opportunity today to learn about what people are doing and start to chart your course.
Thank you. Okay, and Joel.
Hi, again, I'm trying to lean forward a little bit. Name's Joel Avila. Graduated from the college in 2007. About this time, when I was about where you guys are, I did not know what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to do something business related. I knew that I needed to develop a number of different business skill sets, but I just didn't have a grasp of what I wanted to do. I took advantage of every CAPS resource I could. I landed a couple of summer internships, one of which was at LEK Consulting here in Chicago, a management consulting firm. And that turned into a full-time job after graduating from the college. And I was there for about 2.5 years, 2 years and change. And while I was there, I was working in a diversity of projects, primarily, though, in energy and healthcare. And after a couple of years, developed a number of modeling and market research skills. I decided I really wanted to do something specific to healthcare. And then I ended up pursuing an opportunity at CVS Caremark, which is the largest prescription drug company in the world, not producer, but a manager of prescription drugs. And I have, for the last 1.5 years, I've been developing a specific drug plan, which is going to be the go-to product with the advent of healthcare reform. So stay tuned. And currently just using my consulting skills in a very specific environment, more soup to nuts. So I just continue to, I would say that echo what Nick said, is just being able to learn those skills really just gives you the ability to pursue really whatever you really wish. So.
Thank you. And Ava.
Hi, thank you, Linda. Good afternoon. I'm Ava Youngblood, and the email address in the book is incorrect. So I will need to give it to you. I'll give it to you before we leave. I graduated from Northwestern University in 1979 in chemical engineering and went to work for Amoco. I was with Amoco for 19 years. And I also went back to school at night at Booth to get my MBA when I came out, and I graduated in '85. My career is a zigzag. I started in research and development after graduating from Northwestern, and then moved into operations and logistics for the oil side of the company, the gasoline and distillate side. And then I went back to school at night to get my MBA from Booth, got married, had my first son. He was born December 23rd, It's December 31st, just had his 28th birthday, so I can be everybody's mother in this room. Or more. Then moved into, after I got my MBA, moved to the chemical side of the company in operations and logistics. Then I went into quality management, Six Sigma, for those of you who are in this space, and helped set that up in the chemical company. Our second son was born, he's now 24. And then I moved into a sales role where I sold polymers, polypropylene and polystyrene. Any of you all bottle caps on your water bottles, that's polypropylene, and your straws are polystyrene. Now you know about chemistry. Did that for a couple years, got divorced from my first husband, and then Amoco was starting up their version of GE's Crotonville. So I was a faculty member at our Amoco Management Learning Center, and we were tasked to put together a curriculum for the top 3,000 around leadership, strategic thinking, managing change, diversity. I was one of the faculty members, did that job for 2 years. And 2 key learnings: the difference between leaders and managers, and the challenges around large-scale organizational change. And then the vice president of corporate strategy asked me to come to corporate to set up our competitive intelligence function. And we were like an internal McKinsey group for our CEO and his direct reports. And then in 1997, several firms were coming to recruit me, search firms, to do competitive intelligence in other companies. And then one came back and said, "I'd like you to come and do business development in my search firm," because executive search is what I do now. No one goes to school for that. So I took a leap of faith, 2 small kids at the age of 40, went to work for a boutique firm, learned to do search, loved it, and now after 4 years, we started my company in 2002, so now we are 10 years old. Youngblood Executive Search focuses on helping corporations, private equity firms, nonprofits, identify, recruit, develop, and retain wisdom-driven, high-impact leaders. We recruit executives who make anywhere from 150,000 all the way up to millions for corporations. I also have another business that I started that helps provide executive coaching, nutrition and fitness coaching, etc. My second husband, who I met almost 4 years ago at a Super Bowl party, asked me to marry him within 3 weeks, and we've been married almost 4 years. He is a fashion designer. He designs men's and women's clothing. He dressed Bernie Mac from beginning to end, for those of you who all know that comedian. So we have together 5 children. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Sticking with it. Okay. And Erica, welcome. I kept your seat warm.
Thank you. Sorry I was late. I just really had to go to the bathroom.
Some lines.
When I was an undergrad at University of Chicago, I studied international studies and really liked the cultural aspect of that concentration. And I also was really involved with Major Activities Board. I chaired it for a couple of years, and fell in love with writing for the Maroon. I had a column and eventually decided that I really wanted to go into journalism and really wanted to work in magazines. I loved the feature aspect of it. I didn't want to be a sort of like hard reporter. I never wanted to be on the front lines anywhere. I wanted to write about sort of culture and fashion and entertainment and lifestyle. And so I did a couple of internships in magazines and eventually interned at 17, and the profound wisdom of the then editor-in-chief, Tuza Rubinstein, said, don't do something silly like go to journalism grad school, just move to New York and get a job. And so I told my parents, I'm moving to New York and I'm getting a job. And I did. Eventually I worked at Details magazine and then Lucky magazine for 5 years and loved it. And was eventually a senior editor and really loved everything I was doing, but was really watching the magazine industry change. And it just wasn't the field that I thought it was going to be when I started. I think it had changed a lot in the time that I'd been there. And my dream when I started was to be the editor-in-chief of a magazine, and I think that became something completely different and is continuing to become something completely different. So in January of 2010, one of my best friends from University of Chicago and I were going back and forth over email. She was applying for a job at an art website called 20 by 200 that sells limited edition art pieces. And she was applying for a job there for like the 3rd time. She loved this site. She, after University of Chicago, went on to study arts management at Columbia and was just really excited about the possibilities of the internet in relation to promoting artists and helping them get the word out about their work and really changing that whole climate and atmosphere. So we were talking back and forth about her resume and cover letter, and during the process thought, nothing like this exists for fashion. there isn't really a good way for new designers to get the word out online and to sell their pieces. So we came up with this idea for a site that's called Of a Kind. We release limited edition pieces from emerging fashion designers, and then we tell the stories behind them. So for me, I loved 20 by 200 as a concept, but I know nothing about art. So I would see these pieces and be like, well, that's amazing, but if I hang it on the wall, I kind of feel like I have to tell somebody about it, and I don't know what I would say. So the storytelling became really exciting and important to what we were doing. And also, having worked in magazines, I was seeing the ability of what we were doing in magazines to sell product, even though magazines couldn't sell ad pages. So we would see, amazing magazines that people loved, like Gourmet, Fold, because they couldn't sell a big ad page to Cuisinart, but people were still buying Cuisinarts because they were being covered in the magazine. So we spent a lot of time, Claire and I, in the beginning of 2010, really developing what we wanted this business to be and thinking it through and writing business plans, a lot of which no one has ever even seen. And eventually onboarding designers, and in August of 2010, made the really hard, really exciting decision to quit our jobs and start the company. And we launched in November 2011. We've been around, we've been around for just over a year. We've worked with 60 plus designers, and it's been really, really exciting. We've hired our first employee. We have an office space, which is much better than working out of your apartment with interns. And yeah, it's been a really exciting road, and it's really been exciting to be part of the New York startup community.
And Erica, we just before you walked in,
Yeah.
Sue was talking about her startup, and it had something in common with you, which was her powerful vision started while she was in college, and yours was from a college friend. So did you, Sue also went down the path of raising venture capital. Are you done that? Or are you trying to do that?
We've raised friends and family money, so we've done 2 small rounds of friends and family money, but we haven't raised any venture money at this point.
But no, I just wanted to, see
Yeah.
what it was. What were the key ingredients?
Yeah.
This is a powerful group, and we are also a very diverse group in terms of our backgrounds and the kinds of things we're doing. I'm actually the only one here in nonprofit, because Sue, you didn't go nonprofit, did you? No. Okay, so I'm the one person in nonprofit. But I can tell you the one thing that strikes me from just the brief opening remarks is we all started in some ways with a powerful vision. And that's a scary thing to tell you, because I got 2 kids at home who do not have a powerful vision. One's a freshman, one's a junior. But I also think it's instructive, because if you listen to what people were saying, I knew I wanted to go into international business. I knew when I was in college I wanted ... So I think that's an instructive line. It wasn't true for me. When I went to school, do you still have this? Do you have a professional option? We were allowed to go and get a master's degree after our 3rd year in college. So I pro-opt, what was called professional option. So that worked for me. I went to social work school, and then 10 years later I went back and got the MBA. And the last thing I would say about what keeps us all unified, what we all have, if you listen to our stories, we have a grip on our markets. We're in business, we're in very different kinds of business, very different kinds of space, and very different career trajectories and different places. We've been in the field for varying lengths of time, but we all have a grip on our market. So those of you who have walked in here with the idea of business ventures, the things I've heard so far were powerful vision and a real grip on who we're doing business with. What I'd like to do with this panel today, because we don't have forever, is really try to address your questions. So what I'd like to do is encourage you to ask us questions, and if you don't, I will. So, but is there anybody here who's got a burning question, that maybe something we can help you with? Yes.
Sue, I was wondering, currently I'm also working on a startup, a sports startup, and I was hoping you could talk a little bit about the process of finding venture capitalists and angels, what they look for in meetings, and how you find the right venture capitalists for you.
So we started out, I think that for us, we discovered that the fastest route to raising money was to go through a seed program. And I guess, I don't know how in tune everybody is with the tech startup scene, but startups like Tumblr and Dropbox and many, many other consumer kind of web apps that you may or may not use, many of them come out of what is called like a tech accelerator. And this is like summer camp for startups. Like you go, there's a famous guy who's invested in like Yahoo and Google and Facebook and like who knows what a growing startup looks like. And it's extremely competitive. It's like harder to get in than Harvard. Like you know, there's like thousands of people applying for, you know, a few dozen spots. But the thing is, like once you get in, your chances of raising money skyrocket. Because almost everybody who comes out of a good program ends up raising money for their company. And with the more competitive programs, you're guaranteed funding just by getting in. And so, you know, you get in and you're guaranteed, you know, 6 figures or 5 figures. And so for us, we were lucky enough to get into the inaugural year of one of the C programs in Chicago. So we went through Accelerate, and then after that, we had, you know, we'd pitched hundreds of VCs, had good leads on who was interested in our type of business, you know, had networked with other companies who did things similar in our space, had talked to their investors. And so, you know, I know that one of the themes of this taking the next step every year is networking. And I think that that comes before raising money. And there was like a good year of just networking and meeting people and pitching like a crappy idea which turned into a business that was kind of the groundwork for starting the company.
Others? Yes, hi.
This question is more directed to Ms. Youngblood. You mentioned you worked with Ava for 19 years, and I'm also interested in the energy sector. So I wonder if you could speak to your experience with them working with a multinational energy company, and maybe if you had any advice to someone interested in getting into that sector.
Great question. And actually, this is probably one of the best times to get into the energy sector because it's one of the few that's still really growing. And particularly in the United States today, there's significant drilling happening again, particularly in the Appalachians and other parts of the country to drill the natural gas and shale oil. So I went into the oil industry for that reason because when I graduated from Northwestern, I had 11 job offers. But I had worked for Amoco during the summer, and what I liked about it was very diverse. And it was global, and it was an industry that's growing. So when you're like Erica talked about the magazine industry, well, that industry is a lot of transformational change. So you may not want to go into that industry. You want to go into an industry that has growth. Well, she's changed now, but she told you the story. You want to go into an industry that has growth, and if you also have a desire to work globally, you know, you want to go into an organization that provides you with those options. And you see, my career, I didn't stay in one function. I worked in many, many different functions, which is also non-traditional. But I knew that I wanted to take my technical education and move it more into a business context. So I would just say, what is your functional area right now? What are you kind of liking to do right now?
Well, I study economics and public policy.
Okay.
And I've been interested in like supply and distribution.
The supply chain. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. We can talk afterwards. All right.
You're off to the races.
You're networking. Good networking.
Others? Yes.
Many of you have gone like in very different fields and very different jobs. Is there anything that you like have picked up as like something that's very key to like transitioning and being able to be successful in different areas?
It's a great question, and actually I'm glad you asked it because if you hadn't, that was one of the questions I was going to ask, and maybe in a little different way. But one of the things that I think always has to fuel all of us as business is what does success look like, and where are you in relation to that? And I'm talking about personal success, not business success. So what's driving you, and how are you getting there? Is that similar to your question? Maybe I didn't want to like derail your question. So
I would also add focusing on relationships, you know, throughout your career and throughout your transitions, so that you want to make sure the last thing somebody remembers about you is that last interaction with them. And if you don't leave them the right way, or you know, maintain the bridges that you have and those relationships that you have, that can really it can catch up with you. So what in everything you do, and you can start building this now in your time at Chicago, in everything you do, focus on your relationships and try to make them the best you can.
Speaking of that, I'm just going to interrupt the flow of asking questions to you, but there are two themes I keep hearing. One is managing people, which Nick, I know you talked about, and it certainly emerges from your bio, and also the issue of leadership, which Ava, you've talked about, really helping people invest in understanding that a little bit better. And I guess using those themes and realizing that everybody on this panel is in business, I'm wondering, can I do this to you? Can I do this to Wayne?
Sure.
Colin, you to just talk a little bit about, managing people, seeing yourself as a leader, and how did you get into that space? Is that how you felt when you were in college?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think the kind of indirect question is, what classes should I be taking in my senior year, right? Everyone wants to do that. And I think when you enter your first job, the transition in your career is you're going to have hard skills and soft skills. And for your first job, hard skills are really important. How quickly can you do this analysis? Can you, take notes from this meeting? I think that's really important. The classes that you get at the U of C to critically think, to structure problems and solve problems are really important. But as you transition your career, it gets more. You move away from Excel, PowerPoint, Word, and all this programming to managing people. The reason you get promoted to to a very executive level is not because, hey, you can do conditional formatting really well in Excel. It's because you can manage people, you can inspire people and motivate people. I think it comes with time. The really good way of laying the foundation is meeting people. Just understanding and seeking mentors in that first job to be coached and understand what are those little nuances and tricks that get people to be inspired.
Thank you. That's a nice answer. And Joel, can I do the same thing to you and put you on the spot?
Yeah, sure. So going back to the question of leading people, I think that one of the things that, again, and also to go back to your original question of transitioning, learning how to do that, I guess the first thing, and I think consulting helps you do this to some degree, just by default, is really when you are going in and you're learning about a specific area of your business, and you're trying to find out who are the key stakeholders, who are the people, the contacts who really manage that. Really just being able to listen to people, and I think that the part that Wayne said about hard skills and soft skills. The hard skill, absolutely. Everybody has to be able to run Excel. Everybody has to do PowerPoint. But being able to do the things like being able to listen to people and really get a sort of the data dump from people, and also being able to at the same time form that relationship. I mean, Nick talked about that relationship. I think you'll find for the rest of your life, you won't be using Excel or PowerPoint. I mean, you'll be using it at some level, but you'll always be called upon to form relationships. And the way that you get value from people, i.e. the way that you cooperate, is being able to form those key relationships with people, being able to really be able to seek their input. And what you're doing is you are showing people that what they're doing is valuable, and by giving them that recognition, you're going to find that person is far more productive, far better to work with. So again, I would just sort of echo that point that really recognizing, being able to listen to people, being able to recognize and value what they're doing is going to be really important wherever you go, and certainly will help you on whatever learning curve you are in the next job and the job after that.
Let me add something just to build on what Joel and Nick and Wayne had to say, because I'm a numbers person. So summarizing, when you first start out, it's 80% your hard skills, 20% your interpersonal skills. And then it flips. Your success is going to be based 80% on your interpersonal ability to lead and inspire others, and 20% on your hard skills. It flips. So one thing. The other thing too, to your question, I saw a billboard about maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. It says success is 10% hard work and 90% flexibility. And you heard Myrtle talk about it. It's like you gotta be willing to be flexible. If somebody brings you something, you weren't thinking about it, but look, maybe this is an opportunity to continue to learn and grow, and I should just consider it, because that's how I got a lot of my jobs. I'm like, I never knew anything about quality management or sales or anything like that, or search, but I was like, I was willing to consider it. So flexibility is key. And the last one is, we talked about burning bridges, that the world is really, really small. So I tell people, don't burn any bridges unless you can walk on water.
I just like to add a note about team behavior. When I was at U of C, and I don't know if it's changed, but you know, the classes were hard, and at the end of the day, you're accountable for your own grades, your own performance, and you know, we weren't quite isolated all the time for each other, but the individual performance mantra in college, I think, is really different from what we see in the business world. And sometimes we do hire at Access some young people who are right out of school, and part of what I'm looking for really lies in the 20%. And it's really because if they got the job, they probably can do some things. You know, they probably showed some kind of ability to perform, and I'm thinking of one young man in particular who's from a good school, not UC, good school. And what I started to really look for in him is, can he understand the esprit de corps? Can he understand this team spirit? Can he help the team move forward? Not just looking at his own performance, but can he really understand the world around him and how important the team behavior is to the success of our business? And it was interesting because I was watching him make the transition from really being an accountable person only for himself, but really understanding some of the issues that lie in the 20%. So I would guess, when you say you get the hard skills right out of the box, I'm sure you all have it. I'm sure you do. It's getting harder and harder to get into UC. So you had it when you were like 16, but when you come out, I would also try to nurture that part of yourself. One of the things that I have to laugh at, I just remember another anecdote from somebody, again, really new in our company, who really walked in the door saying, okay, what do I need to do to get promoted? And the answer is, sit happily and quietly and perform. I mean, just be there, do it. And so my punchline for that is dial down on the meta communication and dial up on really looking around, keeping your ear to the ground, understanding the culture, watching, listening. There's some of the same things that you had said before.
One thing I would just add about that is just the importance of humility. I think we've all been very lucky to be graduating from the U of C or have graduated from the U of C, and a lot of our peers and colleagues in the future might have not gone to institutions such as ours. And it's really important, especially in that first job, that you don't have that sense of entitlement or how important I am or how I'm going to be changing the world. I think it's great to have that vision, but it's important to be like a sponge in your first job. Just listen. There are people that are more experienced than you who didn't go to the UC, but they're very successful, and just kind of remain humble, and then you'll have a day where you can shine.
That's very nice. Anything else on this before we move to a question? Okay. Yes.
Here's what I'm hearing from the two former consultants. What do you think about the trade-off between, for instance, having the very diverse experiences you had in management consulting versus going into industry from the get-go and sort of being exposed to a lot of that?
I guess to answer that question, I personally knew for myself that I wanted both. I knew that I wanted to have certain skill sets. Right out of college, I needed to develop. I needed to take further. The hard skills that Ava was mentioning. I knew that I needed to push that further. So consulting, investment banking. There are a number of positions that are available through the U of C right out of college. Where you're going to get that. I think for myself, though, at some point, I did want to have a stake in the broader industry or one particular industry. I wanted to be able to not just to be able to understand, okay, well, what's the net present value of, you know, these cash flows for this, you know, new set of assets, but also being able to understand, okay, well, how does this work? How do we actually get, you know, rubber meets the road type of thing? So for me, I wanted both. And I think that eventually most people who go into consulting want both. I mean, most people who go into consulting do exactly that. They go into it, they go do something else. So from a
hard life. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah. Consulting is a hard life, yes. But I think that, you know, again, going back to what was said earlier, I mean, you are going to have times of pressure, and that's where you're, you know, it's the boiler room mentality where you do have to, you know, put the sweat in, and it is you know, an issue, and you know, my colleagues here at the table could probably speak more to the startup side of that, but that is incredibly intensive, and some of them are still going through that. But it is hard, but you are developing. Again, you're undervalued essentially. You know, I read something, you know, this week where we get paid more when we're older and less productive, and we get paid less when we're very productive and, you know, just don't have the experience. And that's just the reality of yeah. So you know, that's just.
I disagree with that.
Well, so again. But no, back to the question of it is hard, and you certainly do make sacrifices. But again, I think that ultimately, if you are developing skills and you do have a goal in mind, but knowing that I've got to get, you know, X, Y, and Z things before I can get to that other thing, you know, it's a period. And Ava and I were talking about at the lunch table. You know, work-life balance is important, and it's going to be rough in the beginning, but to the extent that you've got this trajectory where you're moving more toward balance, I think ultimately is the optimal path. I mean, for most people.
Sure.
You can't see. You
I
have to stand
okay.
up.
Now I see at least where the question's coming from.
Right?
Hi. So you know, what I was just thinking about was, if you know the industry and if you know the industry you want to go into and you're really passionate about that industry, then I would suggest don't lose any time in getting into that industry and becoming an expert in where you're, you know, in the thing that gets you going. You know, the industry, the type of work, you know, because passion about what you do every day is going to get you up in the morning and get you, you know, make work fun. So I would really recommend, again, if you know where you want to go from an industry standpoint, to go into that industry, and then make sure that the company you go into has a philosophy like Amico's philosophy, which was a rotation, you know, a philosophy around rotating people. And getting different opportunities so that you build your expertise. But the other side of it, and that's where I was, I didn't have an industry that I was particularly passionate about. But I knew that I wanted to build a career in global business, and I needed to find the industry that I wanted to specialize in. And that's what it made sense for me to go into management consulting. So maybe that's a way you can think about that.
I think
you did it too, right?
Yeah, and the reason I left consulting, I think Ava talked about it, it's the work-life balance. I think we all need to think about it, and it's tough. You know, you're third year or second year, but you have family, you have career, you have an element of health, spirituality, friends, family, income, and those are all going to go into the equation. I think consulting rewards you in certain areas, and in certain areas you don't really get as much of a life balance as you would like. And for me, I was at that point in my career where I wanted to focus on different parts of my life balance. I think consulting is a great professional delay tactic. That's why I did it. But to Nick's point, if you know the industry, go in it. Consulting is not going to give you that sense of ownership of owning the business, because you are going in, giving a recommendation to your client, And if they take the recommendation, that's up to them, and you don't really deal with the consequences of it. So it's a trade-off, and life's about trade-offs, and you have to figure it out.
I would say that that sense of ownership is really key, and something that motivated me to start a business myself, and it got me to the place thinking that that's what I eventually want to do. I think, you know, I could never have started a business straight out of school. I'm glad that I never thought about doing that. I think working for other people is tremendously important. You need to be the bottom rung on a ladder. It's really important to have menial work. It's really important to learn to be a good assistant or a good associate, and so that you know when you're asking other people to do those things exactly what it's like and exactly what you're asking of them. But for me, I knew that eventually I needed that sense of ownership and to be able to build something from the ground up and deal with the amazing parts of it and deal with the shitty parts of it.
Well, so you have to respond, but what part of, when you were going into business, were you driven in part by that sense of ownership, or?
So I think for sure the sense of ownership is why everybody at the company, you know, took stock over higher pay, and you know, comes in every day, like works really hard in the face of lots of uncertainty. I think it is true that taking other jobs before starting a company helped me in some ways, but I think, you know, for me, I mean, it's kind of by default that I became the CEO. You know, like I was like the sensible person to be the CEO, like the other two guys were engineers, like one of them's the product guy, like I need more of the investor. It just like, it made sense, but I dislike hierarchy in companies, and so we have like a very flat organizational structure where everybody kind of has their project that they're responsible for, and we try to like kind of share the menial work and do all of that. So I agree that kind of going into other jobs, and like I did menial work like throughout college. Like do you guys know Paul Sally? Like I was Paul Sally's office girl. Like I made him coffee and I gave him insulin shots, and like when I did his laundry. So like, you know, I did my share of that. I also worked in a lab, and I like.
We all know. I mean,
I like did like I had like 4 jobs in college, so like it was nice to kind of consolidate it into like one thing that I do every day. But for sure, like I liked working for Paul Sally because I felt like a sense of ownership over his health. It's like I'm gonna make sure that today, you know, like he's comfortable in his wheelchair. Like there was like that, but and so that was a nice sense of ownership. The stuff that went on in the lab, like I didn't really understand. Like I knew it would be in a paper someday and like have, you know, maybe some consequence. But like starting a company, so like my company, I mean, I like the element that we actually work with people. We're a consumer web business, and we help people file their financial aid forms, and it's like a common app for the bunch of financial aid forms that you have to do every year. You know, 18 million people are doing like all these separate forms. We combine it into one form, and you just do one form and we submit it to all the different places for you. And you know, it's nice that we've automated lots of it, but to get there we had to talk to literally, you know, thousands and thousands of students and parents who are going through this process and understand what their concerns are. And knowing that, you know, they're kind of like our customers, and we're helping them get money for school and helping them get the cheapest money first, and helping them save time and money is nice. And it's nice that every decision that we make directly impacts that outcome.
I think one thing you've heard from us, you know, we led, I think, with the word passion, and we migrated to the word ownership. They're quite related, and I think you can sort of feel it in this panel. Again, we're very different people in very different sectors, but I think you're catching some of our key themes. What else from the feed? Yes?
What were some of your most difficult and/or formative obstacles you've encountered? What have you learned from them, and what revitalized your perseverance?
Friends?
What are you talking about, professional or otherwise? Okay.
That's a good distinction.
I think the biggest obstacle for me is really, I think, trying to persevere and do a really, really great job at something when you have very little recognition or very little support from your supervisors, or the people you directly report to, especially when the work gets really hard. I think that's probably one of the bigger challenges, is when you have a combination of, I have a hard task, I have a hard project, and then the people to whom I'm delivering this are not the most appreciative people, and they're not the most cooperative people. That's life. Again, I think that the ability, and I would have to just echo again what Wayne said, the ability to be humble and then also to remember what you were doing. I mean, as Erica said, you're going to be doing menial work starting off, but the ability to be humble, upbeat about it, and just trying to recognize, a lot of, one of the things that you learn very, very quickly in those times is how to position what it is that you're doing. So if this is a very difficult outcome, I have bad news for somebody, what's the best way to put it about? What are the next steps that I need to recommend for this person to address this problem? Because obviously it's going to be very disappointing to somebody. And how do I say, even things like, I think of my boss right now who tends to be a very anxious person. I got to think about, how do I say this in a way? How do I lay out like I said, the problem, the possible solutions that are going to be the most appropriate for that person at that time, and again, it's those hard obstacles where you learn it quickly, or you fail. So I would just say that, again, the hardest project for me, or the hardest thing for me, the biggest obstacle is learning how to deliver, persevere through those tough situations with, difficult people. But you learn quickly.
And let me just build on that, what Joel had to say. You all read the book, The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. What is it? Scott Peck. Who read that book? Nobody? The first line in the book is, life is difficult. So you start with that premise, that this life that we live is not meant to be easy. So, and one of the quotes that I learned early on is around character. Character is not built from sunshine and roses. Like steel, it is forged in the fire between the hammer and the anvil. So you are going to go through a lot in this life. And what is going to define you is how you respond to it. All of us, I do a presentation called The Path to the Executive Suite. And your career is typically in 3 phases. It starts with the area, when you first get out, you're building your confidence, your competence, and your credibility. And the next period is a period of confusion, because now you've got that job and you're not happy. You worked so hard to get this job and this title and you're not happy. So that's the character building years, when you really have to really think about what is it that you really love to do. And all of us, you heard some of that. And then the last phase is your calling, when you're really doing the work that you were put on this earth to do. But you're going to go through a lot. I went through a divorce. I went through, a husband that was addicted to cocaine, and I had to make some very, very significant decisions about, did I stay in that marriage or not? Now, my husband has since re-divorced, and he's healthy, and he's speaking all over the country, but I couldn't stay in that relationship because I had to get out of it in order to focus on my health and raising 2 children. So, made the right decision, and I'm happy I made it, but it was tough going through it. So, and that was my character building years.
I'll just throw out for myself, I've never, with a very few exceptions in a long career, I've never been unhappy in my work. And a couple of times when I have moved to something else. But when you think about challenges, derailing challenges, debilitating challenges, I think yesterday, the day before, it's, when you're in business, that's the game. So you do get derailed a lot. In my nonprofit business, we're taking care of 200,000 people who either have no insurance or, depend on Medicaid. My business partner is the state of Illinois, which is broke, and we're paying, 200, 300 doctors any one day. So, that's kind of what's on my desk. So, yeah, it's like a little mini nightmare every day. Or as a former boss of mine would say, oh no, not the worst day of my life again. So some of that, you get some confidence that you know, you can keep moving things along in a good way. The thing that drives me is the nonprofit mission and the patients at the other end. But I have a sneaking suspicion if I were in a different industry and there was, you know, some goals that I could wrap my mind and heart around. The debilitation would be there, the challenges would be there, but that's part of the almost the joys of the job.
I would add that for me, the 2 hardest times that I think I've ever had personally were the 3 months when I moved to New York after college and didn't have a job and was looking, and the 3 months when I quit my job to start a business. And I feel like during both of those periods, you have a certain confidence about yourself and you have a certain confidence about your abilities and what you can do. But you get really bogged down by all the outside noise of people saying, oh, you want to work in magazines, okay, or oh, you're starting a company, but it doesn't exist yet, and you have nothing to show them, you have no website, you have nothing except your sort of confidence that you know you can make this happen and the confidence in the people that you're working with. But it's really hard to learn to sort of block out that noise and say, I got this, it's fine, and sort of move past it and not let it keep you up at night.
I have to pile on to that. So I got lots of that too. Like, oh, you have a company, like what's the website? We don't have one. When was it incorporated? We didn't incorporate. How many people? Just me? I mean, I got so much of that. And it's like chicken and egg, right? Because like who wants to talk to you if you're this like one person idea? But I think that one thing that I learned, and so one of our board members started this, like you guys know SparkNotes and like OkCupid. So our board member is the CEO of SparkNotes and OkCupid. And he said, you know, I raised $6 million for OkCupid before there was a website, before we had any users. And he said, you know, the difference is like there's sizzle and there's steak. And what you got to be really good at is selling sizzle when you don't have steak. Because, you know, if you have steak, like you're not going to be out, you don't have to be out courting people if you have, they're going to come to you. But there's this period leading up to that where there's like the smell and the anticipation and you're selling like what your vision of, you're selling them the vision of what they're going to get. And I think the ability to kind of package that well and, you know, not lie or exaggerate, but to figure out how to like best position yourself to like sell that sizzle is really important.
What a good business panel we are. We really are of a cloth the more we talk. What else? Yes.
Hi, this one's for Sue. You mentioned that you were the sensible choice for CEO, but a lot of startups will just hire one. I guess like Google did.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. Like a startup company that's just starting out? So I've never heard of this. I mean, I guess that's not true. I mean, I guess like there are some significant startups that have done that. You know, for us, like it really, it was such an organic project of a few people that it wouldn't have made sense for us to say like, let's go out and like hire a professional, like a professional what? Like we're in an industry where like nobody has ever done the thing that we're doing, like nobody has ever made like a TurboTax for financial aid. I mean, who are we gonna find to like build this insane idea and go through like 12 months of product development where like nobody's using the product and we're like making it? I mean, who is better suited to do that than like the people who know the process, who care about it deeply? You know, I was an engineer before I became the CEO, and now I like manage people all day. But you know, along the way, it was we like a big part of the reason that we're working on this company is because we love what we do, and for us to say, okay, well now we're gonna hire a boss to tell us like how to do this thing that like nobody really knows how to do. You know, first of all, it's hard to find that person, and second of all, like we just didn't feel the need. And I think that we might eventually like replace me and replace the other founders with other people, and lots of companies do that. But you know, in this first like year and a half that we're working on it, it didn't really make sense for us to go out and hire a CEO.
All right, now we're gonna go to the lightning round. Rapid fire, rapid questions, rapid answers, because I think we're heading toward the end. Yes?
What would you say is like the single most important thing that you would see on an applicant's application for your business or your company that would make you interested in that?
Did everybody hear that? Can you just, I'm sorry, I can't even repeat it.
What would be the most important thing for you to see on an application that would make you interested in hiring an individual?
I have a quick answer because I look at like 100 of these a month. But like, don't bullshit. Like, if you went to the meeting and like didn't contribute, don't bullshit. Like, actually do something. And if your resume has like one thing that you actually did, I would be impressed because I see so many resumes where like people did not actually contribute to a project.
Good.
Well, key thing is don't just talk about responsibilities. Talk about accomplishments. What did you actually do? To Sue's point.
Demonstrate that you're a self-starter and that you've followed through on something that you've wanted to do and that you're passionate about.
And I would somehow, if you have the ability to show that you're a team player, that's an early strength. What else? Yes.
So when you first just have an idea, how do you start? What do you do? What are the first things you would recommend to do?
You talk to a lot of people. You tell everyone you can about the idea and help that shape the idea. So in the very beginning, we were really silly and thought we'd have designers sign NDAs and things. That's dumb. Unless you're developing some really high-tech product that could be, swiped out from under you, just tell everyone, and you'll find people that are passionate about it and who can pass you along to other people who might know more, and it'll shape from there.
Just so you know, NDA is a non-disclosure agreement.
The other thing too is go work for somebody who's doing something similar to what you like to do, so you can learn the business processes, the contracting, the selling cycle, the infrastructure that's required to start your own business. Then you go start your own business.
What else? Yes.
This is for Mrs. Youngblood. Going back to how your career is kind of been shaped by adversity, how would you judge if I were to apply for a position in your firm or your company? How would you judge someone else's ability to face adversity? Look at it and see how you.
So, great question. The question was around how do you determine if someone's had challenges and adversity in their life and how they overcome it? Well, that's where the interview comes in. And when I interview executives or individuals, I have them tell me their story. And when somebody's telling you their story, they have to be real about how they got from somewhere in their youth or after they graduated college to where they are today. You heard Myrtle's story. You heard that. So you heard my story. You heard the people up here. So that's how I figure it out.
And I would add, when you are telling your stories, make sure that you're, not to be cheesy here, follow the STAR method, which is what's the situation, what were you tasked with, what did you do, and what was the result. So situation, task, action, results.
Result, the STAR, yes.
Next question. Yes.
Maybe one of you guys talk about major mistakes you made in your past and maybe how you
Like yesterday?
Being afraid of saying, I don't know, but I'll find out. I mean, one time I was in a meeting with a client, a pharmaceutical client, I blurted out the answer. I got in pretty big trouble for it. It wasn't the right answer. I should have just said, I don't know, I'll find out. Being able to recognize your limits is crucial. So, yeah, big mistake.
I think the biggest mistakes are when you don't know you've made a mistake. If you make a mistake but you're kind of alive to it, then you can start, kind of planning your way out of the box. When, the thing that's the hardest is, I've been in this mistake for, week in, week out, month in, month out, and I just didn't know. So, I think the most important thing is really being alert to yourself, your business processes, to really, keep your eye, a nice, kind, but judgmental eye on yourself.
And I think the other thing that is so very important, and I heard some of it, is that too often people don't get relevant, timely, critical feedback about how they are being perceived and so they just assume that everything's okay. And a lot of people don't like to give feedback. So all of you all in this room, the most important thing you want to do when you start working with somebody is ask them to give you relevant, critical, timely feedback. You don't want the feedback at the annual review because it's too late. You've been doing this mistake, as Linda said, for a year and nobody told you. When this is happening, ask your boss to give it to you right away so you can course correct. Because after a year, it's too late. Everybody thinks you're stupid. So please always ask for, and you know what? Getting feedback is like taking medicine. It does not taste good going down, but you know it's good for you. Okay?
Are there sociologists in the room? Do you know this concept of like adaptive reserve? You got to have a little bit of extra time. If you're like a hamster in a wheel, which I know like college is a little bit of that, but if you don't ever have a time to pull back and reflect, whether you're doing it with somebody else, you can even do it by yourself. If you don't have the ability and the time to pull back and take a look at where you are and what's going on, then you won't have that ability to learn from mistakes or even see that you're in the middle of a mistake. So I always, we talk a lot about work-life balance, but even within the workplace, you've got to have some balance so that you're not just working, you're also evaluating, and you're looking both at your own performance, but you're looking inward as well.
Right. A big mistake that I've made is getting caught up in the cult of personality of a leader. So when you go to work for a company, you're working for a company. You're not just working for an individual. And make sure that when you're, again, they're very charismatic leaders and people out there, and charisma of somebody that you're going to work with or work for can be a good influencing factor around making a decision. But just be careful to check yourself to how much that's driving you, and because that individual is not the sum totality of the company and the culture. So you want to be careful about that.
All right, let's see. One or two
Can I talk about my
ones.
biggest mistake?
Sure.
Sorry.
No, do it.
I know that there's people in here starting a company, and I'm going to spare you like a year of agony right now. But so, the biggest mistake by far that we made when we were starting out is we go to the person who was our target customer, like we define this customer, we'd explain our product, and they'd be like, I don't get it, I don't want it. And then we'd explain more. But I guess the thing that we learned, hard-won lesson was that then you either have to change, you have to redefine who your target customer is because that person's not your target customer. You have to make your pitch better because that person's not buying it, or your product sucks and you have to change what it does because they don't really see any value and they don't need it. So don't explain yourself. If they don't get your one-line pitch, something's wrong.
Very good. Okay, yes.
What is the one thing that you guys didn't do in college?
I wish I had taken more golf lessons in college. I play now, but I wish I had started when I was in college.
I don't want to pick on you for a second, but at the same time, you're going to be tempted to ask that question a lot, and we're going to be tempted. We get tempted to ask ourselves that questions. I would try to phrase that question a little bit differently, because it's really easy, especially when you're thinking about your career and thinking long term. It's really easy to think of in counterfactuals, but it's really important to stay grounded in reality. So, I do have that question, come up from time to time, but every time that happens, I try to say, no, I did this in college. Yes. So your question is one half of the question, which is what do I wish I did in college? And then once you've answered that, say, but how am I a different person because I didn't do that? What were the other things that I did that made me who I am? So I don't want to pick on you. I'm just saying complete that question.
Well, I would have a lower handicap if I started in college.
All right, one last one, and then I hear noise in the hall. So in the back row.
How do you go about continuing to learn about your field? Where do you go to get information? You look for mentors? Do you read up on your own time? Where do you go to, because all your fields are changing constantly. How do you stay up to date?
3 ways to develop yourself as a leader. One is education, so you find courses that are challenging you. The other is to get yourself active and involved in different types of challenging assignments, either volunteering or outside of your company, or going to serve on task forces in your company where you're in a cross-functional team. And so 10% is education, 70% of it is the experiences, and the 20% is exposure, the mentors, the sponsors, the role model, the critical feedback. So that's how you continue to grow as a leader.
And I was going to say, that's a softball for me to end, because look at us. We all get, it's Saturday. We all decided to come down here and talk to people. We've all come out of our box to meet some, now we all know each other. So we're all big networkers. We're people, I think, who all want to get out a little bit of our normal zones, see who else is out there and see what they're saying. And at least I think for us today, I hope it kept all of us alive a little bit as a panel. You're a great audience. Good luck. You're going to do great.